Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Mortgages and Markets. And on today's episode, we have Sam from the kitchen. So this week, he's in a kitchen. We just checked. Apparently, that coffee maker behind him is empty. So that's all good. Sam, welcome. Thank you for showing us more rooms of houses you live in.
Yeah, there you go. Told you, I'm trying to keep things spicy.
That a boy, that a boy. Hey, so it's all about when we're talking about mortgages and markets, it's all about that. So that's cool. All right.
Exactly.
So first thing I want to talk about, because it's on the top of everybody's minds, all these default insured mortgage changes. Let me summarize in hopefully 1 minute or less. CMHC, Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, came out, bunch of rule changes, less affordability, minimum credit score, down payment requirements. Again, very long story short, the two private insurance companies are not following suit. So July 1st is completely uneventful from that standpoint. The end. People just probably don't have to worry too much about the new rules because, again, the other two companies can do it. And I know most banks, lenders, they have access to all three. So hopefully it's just a nice, uneventful, other than Canada Day, an uneventful day that way. So
Hey, fingers crossed.
Exactly. So other than that, that's really been the mortgage news all week. What are you seeing on the markets, man? What's happening out there?
We were kind of chugging along. Record highs, trying to get there. At least the Nasdaq is, but it looks like we were starting to see a bit of a turn, kind of intraday today. I'm assuming it has probably something to do with the fact that the last couple of days has been pretty ugly from record cases down south. It sounds like we have a couple states there, and we were just talking. Was it Arizona, California, Florida, and Texas are struggling to keep their numbers low. They're hitting all-time highs, record high after record high.
Of course, we're talking about coronavirus.
Yes,
right?
yes. My apologies. I just
Yeah.
assume everything we talk about now is about COVID.
Yeah. They're just not high. It's just
Yeah,
the coronavirus is the high. Okay, got it. Making
exactly.
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like things are getting a little bit wonky. It sounds like Apple just decided to shut down stores in, don't quote me, but two of those states, or reclose the stores.
I was going to say, these are closed that have opened or reopened, and now they're, oh boy, that's
exactly, not good. Right? So, and I think yesterday I saw California is now mandating that face masks are required in public. Doesn't matter where you go. Doesn't matter if you're outside. Doesn't matter if you're in stores. It looks like, it makes sense. Let's be honest. If things are getting to that point where you can't control the spread, you have to do this. But, that's going to probably be the thing that we're going to be looking at from the markets to see if things start to continue getting that bad, if it continues to spread through the southern states or the rest of the United States. How does that impact reopening? How does that impact sales? How does that impact everything?
So, okay, the Americans are not listening. Let's just call it what it is. They're just not listening. Okay, they've opened early. They're just not following any sort of guidance, and it probably starts from the top. So, again, our biggest trade partner. What is this going to mean? Like, how is this going to impact us if they keep going open and closed and open and closed? How is this going to impact us in Canada?
It impacts supply chain. That's really the big thing that it does, right? We have the borders that are now extended. The closure for non-essential travel between the US and Canada is extended. The supply chain is really what this comes down to. I mean, it seems to be that the food processing plants are getting affected increasingly, right? Which is why food prices are going up. I mean, some of my favorite restaurants are now saying we have to adjust prices. So these are the small or big problems from, small pockets that keep popping up. And it becomes an issue of shipping and getting items over, over the border and manufacturers, because a lot of this stuff comes from the States, right? Yeah. It's not domestic the way that it is. So that's probably going to be the problem. Now, from the flip side, I think this morning I read that Ontario is about to unveil their plan to send kids back to school in September.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So congratulations. I know you're waiting.
That's right. One of them for sure.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see as well, right? It seems to be a constant ebb and flow of we get excited, things are moving in the right direction, and then we come right back. So fingers crossed here in Canada, we can keep it under control, but I still think it was the GTR is still kind of on shutdown, it looks like, and it could potentially go past Canada Day.
Yeah, and GTR being Greater Toronto region, I think they're just heavily populated, and I think it is what it is. There was an article about a subway station where a train was delayed for 14 minutes or something like that, and they showed pictures of people just squished in like sardines. Like, it's not
Yeah.
Is it even possible to maintain social distancing on a subway system, right?
I don't know. It's the same thing that happened in China. I was reading yesterday that so some of their meat plants in Beijing, or not, excuse me, not meat plants, but meat markets are showing cases, or at least there are traces of the coronavirus on those, on the floors and in those markets, because again, it's tough, right? If you have humans that are jam packed, if you have food, if it's kind of a cold environment, because well, that's what probably happens in meat markets, it spreads,
Yeah.
right? So Middle East is having some troubles. China's starting to show some troubles. The southern part of the states is showing troubles. This isn't going anywhere.
And that's the thing. I think and I'm going to ask for your opinion on this in a second. It's one of those things where it changes every single day. We don't know exactly what it does and doesn't do. Realistically, we don't. We're making this up as we go along. And I mean, when I hear you say kids going back to school in September, you want to talk about a bigger petri dish of problems, like talk about a school with young kids, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't see it happening. We've seen most universities, now, I don't know if it's most, but many universities are online. That's it. Fall,
Yeah.
it's online. Sports have been canceled. CIS, a Canadian Inter-University Sport, CCAA, there's a CCAA, Canadian Colleges Athletic Association, all shut down until January. For those of you who don't know, I coach competitive volleyball. Indoor competitive volleyball has been shut down until January 2021. So, there's an unknown. We don't know what the heck to do with this. What do you think, man? What's going to happen with this?
Um, I'll save I'll reserve my guesstimate. What I will say
No, you can't.
is,
Come on. That's how we hold things against you, man. We come back and say, you said
yeah,
this, right?
yeah, waiting to get sued. That's all it is. I mean, here's the simple problem. If we have additional cases, if we show that we're struggling to maintain it in the summer months, it seems to be that the reemergence of this is almost an inevitability. Now,
Yeah.
if we get to the point where we have plexiglass and we're wearing masks and we're doing this hand sanitizer, hopefully we can reduce it. But I don't know how that plays out in the fall. That's really the kicker. Is how does this play out in the fall? So, I'm a little bit cautious in that regard. I think the markets, to take it back to the markets, because that's really why we have this session, is it's looking for direction. And it's going to be really hard for the markets to tear higher, aggressively, if there's not optimistic news in unemployment, if there's not optimistic news in GDP, if there's not optimistic news in all the categories that we track. So that's really why this changes on a week-to-week basis. And it's almost an impossibility to say with clear direction, yeah, this is what's going to happen.
So is having that, one thing that worries me is having the border closed for
Yeah.
non-essential. And I know it's non-essential,
Yeah.
but how is non-essential travel going to impact the markets? I mean, I'm pretty sure tourism is going to be just shot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going down there. We're supposed to travel. We're just not going, right? How does that impact the market? Non-essential travel.
Well, I mean, you just physically don't have as many people going out there and spending money. You don't have people spending that disposable cash flow on the traveling and the dining out and the transportation. And it extends to the things like sports as well, right? Think of all the different leagues that are not sending, however big these teams are. The NFL is hundreds of people deep between training staff and whatnot. They're not going out to restaurants to get fed because you can't feed 150 football players that easily, right? So this type of issue becomes the problem logistically of how do these companies weather the storm? How do companies like, Carnival and the airlines and the cruises and the hotels, how do they maintain their bottom line?
Yeah, or do they? I mean, who's the next person that's going to go on a cruise, right? And I mean, that impacts jobs and everything. I think I'll leave it on this. I think our biggest, if we see the NFL shut down, in all seriousness, if the NFL does not go in the fall, is that $1 billion, maybe $1 trillion revenue generating sport?
Yeah.
If that doesn't go, you got problems. NBA, MLB, I don't think we're going to see them, to be honest with you. But NFL doesn't go, we're talking TV, jobs, you name it. That NFL touches everything. Man, if we don't see that, we got a big, big problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
The only backstop to all this is the Fed. The Fed has been pretty good about trying to keep the floodgates open, the buybacks, the liquidity, and that's really what's driving this rally. So we'll see. I mean, the Fed came out again this week and they said, we're buying individual corp bonds. They've been buying ETF corp bonds or bonds in general. So,
And so what are those? What does that mean?
so basically, on the liquidity side of things, the way that it kind of works is there's the stock side that we see, but there are other parts of the market. There's treasury bonds. There's different avenues that the average investor probably doesn't get involved in. And if you start to see a flooding of people to cash out, it becomes an issue with where does it come from, right? When movement goes on a day-to-day basis, usually the volume is normal and it can create some form of, you know, trading on the buy and sell side. But if everybody starts selling, now it becomes a question of where is this coming from. So the Fed is trying to do everything in their power to stop that happening because they've seen this issue in past recessions and market downturns. And that's probably been the biggest thing that has calmed the markets over the last, what is we now, almost 2-3 months of this. So, you know,
All right.
but it's going to dilute the power at some point. You can't do this on an open book. It just doesn't work that way.
I can't imagine. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So
Yeah.
All right. Well, good to know, man. Honestly, it's like I said, we're kind of making this up as we go along and new things happen, and just watch those US numbers, you know, let's see what happens with this coronavirus stats and, you know, hope for the best. But Sam, have an awesome day, buddy. Hope you can make some lunch. It's easy. Just turn your chair, make yourself a sandwich. You're good to go.
Have
And
to do that.
that's it. All right, folks, have an awesome, awesome week. And if you have any questions, you know where to find both Sam and I. We'll talk to you soon.